The first time I met Aarav, he was sitting alone by the canteen window, watching the rain as if every drop whispered a secret only he could hear. I don't know why I noticed him, but something about his quietness felt louder than all the noise around. Maybe it was the way his eyes smiled before his lips did, or how he seemed completely at ease in a world rushing to be noticed. It started with something simple, a packet of chips. I had forgotten my wallet that day, and when I hesitated at the counter, he slid a note forward without saying a word. Just a small act of kindness, but it left an imprint. Later, when I thanked him, he just smiled and said, "You looked hungry." That was Aarav, soft-spoken, observant, and endlessly calm. Days passed, and our paths kept crossing in the library, on the stairs, at the tea stall near the college gate. At first, it felt like coincidence. Later, it began to feel like rhythm, like the world wanted us to keep meeting. He'd bring an extra sandwich, saying he couldn't finish it alone. I'd pretend to protest, then take a bite anyway. Once, I teased him, "Next time, feed me properly. You're too polite." He laughed, broke a small piece, and said, "Then open your mouth." It was just a playful moment, but somehow, it felt deeper, a quiet symbol of how comfortable we'd grown. That day, laughter tasted sweeter than any food we shared. He wasn't like anyone I'd known. While others bragged, he listened. While others made noise, he made me feel heard. We started walking home together after class, talking about everything: dreams, music, the kind of people we wanted to be. I found myself waiting for his messages, for his voice, for that easy silence that existed only between us. One evening, the rain returned, gentle, rhythmic, familiar. We stood beneath the college gate, watching students run to avoid getting drenched. He looked at me, smiled softly, and said, "You love the rain, don't you?" I nodded. He opened his umbrella and held it above both of us, his shoulder brushing mine. For a second, I felt time pause, as if the universe itself had taken a deep breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed his smile, his voice, the way he said my name. It wasn't love yet, not the kind that shakes the world, but it was something pure, something that made ordinary days feel extraordinary. Looking back, I realized that was the beginning, the moment I handed over my trust without even knowing it. The day I let someone taste a piece of my world and believed he'd never let it go. And maybe that was my first mistake. The weeks that followed felt like a dream stitched together with sunlight and laughter. Aarav and I had slipped into a rhythm only we understood. Morning coffee runs, late-night calls, and inside jokes that belonged only to us. Every small moment carried warmth until it didn't. It began quietly. A missed message. A delayed reply. Little gaps that felt harmless at first, but started to widen like cracks in glass. Aarav still smiled, but his eyes no longer met mine the same way. His words felt careful, as if measured before being spoken. I told myself it was nothing, maybe exams, maybe stress, but deep down, I knew something had shifted. One evening, I found him sitting alone on the same canteen bench where we first met. His phone was in his hand, his thumb moving quickly across the screen. I walked up behind him and said, "Texting me before I even arrive?" He startled slightly, turned off his phone too quickly, and forced a smile. "Just a classmate," he said. I smiled back, pretending not to notice the tremor in his voice. The next day, our silence grew heavier. He stopped waiting for me after lectures. He stopped asking about my day. The warmth that once lived between us began to cool into distance. When I asked if everything was okay, he said, "You're overthinking again." I wanted to believe him, so I did. We still met sometimes, sitting together in that same canteen. I'd bring 2 cups of tea, one for him, one for me, and try to bridge the growing emptiness between us. Once, I held a spoon of sugar toward him and joked, "You've forgotten how to sweeten things." He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "Some things can't be sweetened again." That night, I lay awake, the words echoing in my mind. Something about the way he said them, distant, resigned, felt like a goodbye disguised as truth. Over the next few days, I noticed him avoiding certain places, the tea stall we loved, the corridors where we used to meet. I caught glimpses of him with someone else, a familiar face, a girl from our literature class. Each time I asked, he brushed it off as coincidence. But coincidence doesn't linger, doesn't whisper, doesn't hide smiles. The warmth between us had turned into something fragile, a memory trying to survive inside a fading connection. I kept trying to hold on, but love isn't love when only one person is still reaching out. The next time we met, he seemed somewhere else entirely. His body was there, but his soul had already left. And though he didn't say it out loud, I could feel it. The sweetness that once filled every moment between us had begun to taste bitter. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning of an ending I wasn't ready to face. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that feels harmless until it changes everything. I was scrolling through my phone during lunch when a picture stopped me cold. Aarav was there, smiling, the same soft smile that once belonged to me, but this time, his hand was holding a cup to another girl's lips. That girl was Mira, my classmate, someone I'd once helped with notes. The caption below the post read, "Some moments are too sweet to share." My fingers trembled as I read it again and again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less painful. But they didn't. It wasn't the photo that broke me, it was the familiarity of it. The gesture. The same playful way I once told him, "Put it in my mouth," when he'd offered me a bite of his sandwich. That simple moment, once ours, now recycled, regifted, and cheapened. That I felt a rush of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak all colliding at once. My heart refused to accept what my eyes saw. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that maybe it was innocent. But the look in his eyes in that picture wasn't friendly. It was tender, familiar, the look that used to be mine that evening. I waited for him at the canteen, the same table where everything had begun. When he arrived, surprise flashed across his face, followed by guilt. I held up my phone, showing him the photo. "So, this is what you meant by just a classmate?" My voice didn't tremble, but my heart did. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and said quietly, "It's not what you think." I almost laughed. The words felt rehearsed, hollow, and cowardly. "Then tell me what it is," I said. He looked away. That silence said more than any excuse could. The moments that followed blurred, a storm of emotions, words I can't even remember. What I do remember is the emptiness in his tone when he finally said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at him, realizing that maybe he hadn't meant it, but he had done it anyway. Intentions don't erase actions. Love doesn't survive lies. As I walked away, the air felt heavier, the sky darker. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then fierce. I didn't run from it this time. I let it drench me, hoping it would wash away the memory of him, his smile, his voice, the way he used to say my name. But the rain can't erase betrayal, it only makes it colder. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the cruelest part of love isn't the ending, it's realizing the person who once fed you sweetness was the same one who left you starving for honesty. And for the first time, I began to wonder if love had ever really been there at all. For weeks after that day, I carried silence like a shadow. Every place that had once felt warm now echoed with absence, the canteen, the library, even the quiet corners where we used to sit. His voice lingered in the smallest things, in the hum of my playlist, in the smell of rain, in the taste of tea that no longer felt the same. At first, I tried to hate him. I thought anger would burn away the hurt, but it didn't. It only kept me chained to his memory. So, slowly, I began to let go, not of him, but of the version of myself that kept waiting for his apology. I realized forgiveness wasn't about him deserving it, it was about me deserving peace. One morning, I returned to the canteen alone. The same spot by the window, the same sunlight spilling across the table. I ordered a cup of tea, just one, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. I smiled at the server, stirred in the sugar, and whispered softly, "This time, it's for me." It felt strange at first, reclaiming the spaces he'd left behind. But with every small act, reading my favorite book again, laughing with friends, walking under the rain without thinking of him, I started rebuilding the pieces he had fractured. Pain has a taste. It's bitter at first, sharp and unbearable. But if you sit with it long enough, it begins to change, not sweeter, but softer. It teaches you to value truth over comfort, and solitude over false companionship. Weeks turned into months. The world didn't suddenly become easier, but I did. I learned to feed myself kindness, to speak gently to my reflection, to believe that love should never feel like a sacrifice. The girl who once waited to be fed love by someone else had learned to nourish her own heart. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on that same bench where everything had begun. I watched new faces laugh, share food, share secrets. I smiled, realizing how life continues even when love doesn't. Somewhere, between the first bite of heartbreak and the last sip of forgiveness, I had changed that if he ever thinks of me, I hope he remembers not the girl he hurt, but the girl who loved him honestly, because that was my truth, and I no longer needed his apology to validate it. Love didn't destroy me. It revealed me, and now, when I think of those words, put it in my mouth, I smile, not with regret, but with understanding. Because I finally know what it means to feed my own soul, to taste life on my own terms, and to never again let someone else decide how sweetness should feel. That's the real ending, not losing him, but finding myself.